Hey everybody, Dawn Zoldi here, and I am so excited to be with Colby Free. He is the Vice President of Product for Airspace Link. And today we are taking you to this worldwide premiere of AirHub Portal. We're calling this thing Uniting the Skies and Streamlining Workflows. You're going to learn all about the functionality of AirHub Portal, why it exists, and why you care about it. So, Colby, hello.
Hello, Dawn. Good to be here. Appreciate the invite.
Of course, of course. So excited to learn more about AirHub Portal. I know this has been so long in the making. People are really excited to learn more about it. I think we have a video to roll to give us a little glimpse. So let's go ahead and do that now. Kobe, that's a great overview, but I want to walk it back a little bit. And can you explain for us the vision behind this product?
Yeah, there's a lot of ground to cover there, but if I were to sum it up in an elevator pitch, ultimately, Airspace Link, we have a vision to provide what we call the digital infrastructure that's necessary to support the growth of drones across the full spectrum of use cases that we're seeing out there.
All right, that's pretty succinct. So there are a lot of pieces, right? There's a lot of pieces to the puzzle, whether you're an individual drone pilot, a government agency, you're working in some kind of large enterprise, and you're just basically trying to pull all those together. Is that kind of the point of this?
Yeah, that's a great question. So if you get right down to it, essentially we're trying to build a platform, and that is AirHub. And that platform is to be used as a shared and trusted environment that provides all the capabilities necessary to scale drone operations to help realize their full potential. But we got to strike a balance. We want to make sure we're doing that while ensuring all the operations are legal, they're safe, they're in harmony with the communities that they serve. But ultimately, it's a single ecosystem for all the different stakeholders to come in and contribute to that end.
Well, again, there are a lot of stakeholders that we're talking about here, and you have all different kinds of things to navigate through, regardless of which stakeholder group you belong to. So can you walk us through the methodology for the primary navigation in AirHub Portal?
Yeah, let me talk about some of the challenges, and then that'll
Yeah,
give us some
please.
good landscape. All right, so there's a lot of actors, there's a lot of roles that are associated with UAS operations and integrations into the communities, and there's a lot of things to keep in mind. Whether that's regulations, operational safety, maybe organizational policies, different types of use cases, and operational ConOps. And what we found in working with a lot of the operators over the years is that there's just there's too many pieces of software, there's too many data that are necessary to be able to support all that activity for each one of those roles comprehensively. It's just way too fragmented. And that's where the AirHub platform comes into play. Essentially, it brings all the technology and the data and makes it accessible through a robust API. Now, the platform is also designed essentially to bubble up those capabilities using our AirHub Insights data through the API, and that can be accessed through the AirHub Portal product. That's our flagship product, right? Okay, so now the methodologies that you talked about, lots of things to do, but we have a view in working with the operators, right? We realize there's a bit of a workflow that the operators are going through. I think it would resonate with most operators if I were to say there's pre-flight, in-flight, post-flight type of activities. We broaden that out a little bit into these 3 steps that are discover, plan, operate, and manage. And if you would allow me, I'd be happy to go into some of the details on that.
Yeah, so absolutely. Tell us about discover first.
Okay, perfect. So discover, these are essentially the features that give the operator what they need to get a better understanding of the operation landscape. What does their environment look like? What are the things that they need to be thinking about to successfully plan the operation? Maybe it's height restrictions, maybe it's notice to airmen, maybe it's TFRs, but you'll find all that information in a single view to be able to mitigate some of those risks or ensure that you're regulatorily compliant. And that takes us to plan.
Yeah. So where is the information from this that goes into this map? Where is it coming from?
Really, really good question. I love that one. So we take these data seriously, and we've recognized that there's a lot of authoritative data sources out there that are best suited for any particular type of use in the features and functions. Good example you can actually see on the screen here is the FAA. The FAA provides what's called a facility map, right? So this is the information that the operator needs to make sure that they're planning an operation that's compliant. And so when they make a request for authorization, they can be ensured that they're going to get that approval for their operation.
Okay.
We get and just to add, so whether it's the FAA, there's other sources that are out there. It may be Department of Transportation, it may be state and local governments, maybe Department of Homeland Security, but there's a lot of authoritative data sources that we bring in to essentially hydrate that view of the operational space. So again, the operator doesn't have to worry about that. They don't have to go to all those sources. They don't have to bring those data into a single view. It's all been curated for them specifically for their operational decision making.
And Colby, this is all very customizable, is that right? In other words, what something might look like in downtown Detroit is going to look very different from where I am sitting in Colorado Springs, Colorado. And you work with the local governments and all kinds of stakeholders to make sure not only that FAA data, but other relevant data is included in this kind of discover functionality.
You got it. That's a great point. We've learned over the years that there's a lot of information that is relevant to the operator from all levels of government, whether that's the federal, state, regional, local. And in order to have that full view and to be able to garner the insights that they need, again, to hit those targets,
right,
making sure they're safe, legal, and in harmony with the communities, you need it all the way down to the state and locals. And so the platform provides those stakeholders to be able to contribute some of that information that, to your point, is very unique to that specific region.
Now, once I've discovered kind of what my environment is, for lack of a better term, really, because we're talking ground, we're talking air, the whole entire ecosystem that's out there, how do I then plan my operations?
Yeah, so that's where we can take all that content and bring it into an operational planning workflow. So a really good example is as a LANC provider, that's a low altitude authorization notification capability provider for the FAA, there's a lot of data that needs to be applied to the operation planning process to make sure that you're compliant. So, what our features do is essentially use that content, that data, to be able to confirm that you're compliant as you're going through the process. So, and we'll show this in a demonstration. So, if I were to start operational planning within a given location within the entire United States, I start to get information associated with that. Are there any advisories? Are there any NOTAMs? How am I looking in terms of the height restriction? That's all been automated for the user. So they don't have to essentially do that computation in their mind. AirHub Portal does that for them.
Well, that's key. And what about when I'm actually operating then? What does AirHub Portal bring to the fight there?
Yeah, so when you're operating, that's going to give you, we'll call it situational awareness of everything that's going on through the course of the operation. You'll get a better understanding of where that operation is occurring. Is there anything dynamically happening that may factor into your operational decision making? Perhaps, and this would be unfortunate, but it's certainly a possibility. A crewed aircraft enters your operational space. Well, are you aware of it? Do you have the alerts and notifications to be able to be informed that that's just occurred? And do you have the awareness that you need to be able to take mitigating action to ensure the safety not only of that crewed aircraft, anybody on the ground, or even your operation team?
So, whereas Discover and Plan are more, let's just call them static data sets, this is more dynamic, almost near real time information while you're actually in flight.
That's correct. So that essentially is pulling together from different sources. It may be the telemetry from your drone itself. It could be from ADS-B, maybe radar sources. That's the beauty of the platform. It's agnostic. It doesn't need one particular source or another. And as we know, there's really no one data source to rule them all. There could be many that you need to accommodate depending on maybe the context of your operation. But ultimately, we're bringing that together so you can see your operation essentially in the course of the flow of the operation, and then you can also see perhaps what else is going on in the airspace, even in the ground. We've brought in data, mobility data, or transportation related data like ground traffic. As you know, ground hazards are a significant concern to the FAA when it comes to advanced operations as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's that last piece of the puzzle here, this manage piece. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so we've seen for these organizations, especially when your operations start to scale in terms of numbers, in terms of the crew that's necessary to be able to support it, perhaps even the assets that are required. There's a need to be able to get a better understanding of what's available and is to be applied to those activities. Who flew the operation? What drone did they fly? When did they fly it? Where did they fly it? That's essentially what Manage is all about. It gives the organization the means to be able to better understand, better utilize those resources to ensure that, again, not only are you compliant, but you're getting the most out of the investment that you're making into integrating drones into your organization or your community.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of analytical return on investment data is really cool to understand, is this effort worthwhile? Are we doing the right thing here? So that's critically important. So, we talked about all these different stakeholders that can plug into AirHub Portal. And I think it might be a great time, Colby, to talk a little bit about the user ecosystem.
Yeah, I'd love to. We talked about the stakeholders, as you mentioned, and they have a part in the design of the AirHub Portal as well. Not only are we thinking about the workflow, but what role needs to be supported within each one of the steps of the workflow. And so that's what the user types or the AirHub Portal user ecosystem is all about. We have the director, the planner, the manager, and I think some of those are self-explanatory, but if you like, I'd be happy to go into details on each one of those.
I mean, I think operator is pretty self-explanatory and manager, but like, what Let's talk about director a little bit because maybe that's not usual for every single scenario. So, what is the director's role?
Yeah, think of that role as being somebody who is overseeing all these activities within the organization holistically. They're going to have things in mind about total risk mitigation. They're going to have things in mind in terms of regulatory compliance. Perhaps the organization even has policies themselves that they need to work into their operations that aren't covered in the regulations, but are of significant interest to the organizations. So that role essentially is enabled with those features and functions, not only to have a good understanding of what's going on across the entire organization, but to be able to make those strategic contributions through policies or maybe publishing advisories and notifications that are associated with ensuring, that they're meeting that mission, but they're doing it in a way that is well aligned with the organization and their business.
Okay, very cool. Now, oftentimes operators plan their own missions, and obviously they could use AirHub Portal to do that. But the planner that you have here is a little bit different, maybe. This is more like what, someone from the local government or community?
Yeah, it could be either way. It could be within the organization, or it could be within a public community. We like to look at like two main buckets for an organization when it comes to drones. You can have organizations that are focused externally in integrating drones in their community, or you can
Okay.
have organizations that are looking to integrate drones into their business or into their mission. And
Okay.
so that's what the planner is all about. So there's a lot of times, let's say if there's an organization that's on the public side of the house, and there are locations. FRIAs are a great example.
Hmm.
What defines a great location for a FRIA for that drone park? Where's a good?
By the way, for those that don't know, and I'm sure you do, but just in case, a FRIA is the federally recognized identification area that is required for remote ID. If your drone is not remote ID compliant, this is where you're supposed to only be flying. So this FRIA space is what you're talking about, Colby.
That's exactly right. And there's a great interest, and thank you for
Yeah.
helping me with the acronym there. I often forget. But yeah, so there's a great interest in a lot of these communities to start embracing drones and fostering, the engagement at the recreational level. But they're asking that question: where would we like these FRIAs or drone parks to be located? How do we make sure that it's in an optimal location, not only for maybe their planning purposes, but also that aligns with some of the regulations or height restrictions associated with even being able to operate a drone in some of those controlled airspaces. So that's where the planning tools start to come into play. So not only can you answer those questions, but you can publish that information to the operating community to be able to, again, be included in their operational planning activities.
All right. Well, awesome. Okay, so we talked about the methodology and the primary navigation, the discover, plan, operate, manage. We described the different user types that we see here, right? Director, planner, manager, operator. Now let's bring both of those together, Colby, and walk us through the AirHub Portal platform and how the primary navigation functions and user types interface.
I'd be thrilled to be able to do a little bit of a demonstration here. I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right, I see it. I see it on the screen. What are we looking
Okay,
at?
fantastic. Okay, so this is actually AirHub Portal. I've got, in the interest of time, I went ahead and already logged in. But you can see on the left side, there's the primary navigation. And lo and behold, we have that same workflow: discover, plan, operate, and manage. And so
Okay.
that combination of essentially those workflow, we'll say, groupings of the features aligned
Yeah.
with my user type, it's going to give me exactly what I need in that role as I go through that process.
So, question: the screen we're looking at right now, what user type are you, let's just say, playing, if you will, for purposes of this demo right now?
That's a really good question. So for the purpose of this demo, since I'm going to go through the entire spectrum of capabilities, I'm all
Yeah.
for it. So that's the
Oh,
beauty.
okay. Mind
Yeah,
blown. He's a
exactly.
mega user. Okay. Gotcha.
Surprise. You
Yeah.
can actually mix and match, because here's why we actually did that, Don. there are organizations that start maybe with one person that's playing multiple roles.
Well,
Okay,
that's true. Yeah.
yeah, so we'll give that user all those user types.
Okay.
But as they grow and evolve, then there's more division of labor, and then we can start dividing that up across those user types and simplify things for them in terms of the interface, because there's a lot going on inside this application.
Well, there clearly is. Now, on the left side, those different navigation functionalities, which one is highlighted? Like, which one are we in?
We are in Discover right now.
Discover. Okay.
That's right. And so if you recall, I was talking about we aggregate over 50 different authoritative data sources. Not exaggeration, really, truly, it's 50. And you can see this list here in the legend of all the data that we're pulling in, and it's growing.
So that tells me as a user, like where this is all coming from.
That's right. So we want to be transparent in our sources, and that's often a common question. We'll let folks know, hey, this is where we're getting the data that are in the map, and you can dig a little bit deeper and get a better understanding of the source of the data. But again, it's authoritative data. It usually goes back to a governing organization, sometimes commercial sources, but 9 times out of 10, it comes from a public source.
So I'm in the discovery mode, if you will, right? You're walking me through this. And so what am I looking at? I see like little pink dots. I see yellow dots. I see kind of chartreuse green, large areas and darker shaded green areas.
Yeah, a lot of fun colors here. We like to try to do our best in putting good cartography against all the data coming into the view here. But just to highlight some of the key data sets, we talked about the facility maps here. There's your cyan colors that you see that have the height restrictions that tell you how high.
It's cyan. There you go. It's cyan. I love it.
Cyan, that's right. Well, people are listening. Our designers.
I know. You're good. You're good.
So, and you'll see some other things, ground hazards are often of interest, so we've got schools or public locations, maybe some of the aeronautical or aviation infrastructure, heliports, obstacles like towers. There's a lot in here that can be used to apply to your operation.
Okay.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. You were going to say something, Colby.
Yeah, and we talked about the director, right, role and how they might be publishing advisories. Here's one now. There's actually an advisory in here. By the way, can you guess who's at this location?
No, I can't. It's like I. You know what? I'm just gonna put my glasses on. I'm trying to see. It's like tiny on my screen. Airspace Link.
That's right. That's our home office. That's where a lot of action is going on. Exactly.
That's so cool.
So I went ahead and created an advisory here. So you can see even those dynamic data that might be coming from those public organizations that want to communicate some activity. This one in particular is actually for an advisory for a emergency operation, right? You've heard of drone as first responder. So that's a really good example. How do you communicate that this activity is occurring to other drone operators, right? So your public safety groups could publish an advisory to the community. Hey, there's a drone operation, be advised. If you're planning, maybe a 107 operation or recreational operations, now there might be a public safety drone en route.
Wow, that's awesome, Colby, because I know for UAS traffic management or UTM, that's been a big concern, right? Like, how do you alert people for this dynamic emergency situation to give public safety primacy in that particular space? You've cracked this nut. I mean, you're doing it.
Yeah, this is the first step. That's right, into UTM proposition. You got it.
Okay. Wow, that's awesome. All right. So before you fly, I'm a drone pilot. Yes, they gave me a license for real. I'm going on this app. How does that interface with this?
Yeah, really good question. So not only are we a LANS provider, but we're also just as of last Thursday, we're really excited.
I saw that. Congratulations.
I know. So tip of the hat to the FAA for giving us the opportunity to be able to provide the service to our operators. So before you fly, here's what's the beautiful thing about Portal. Okay, so when you come into our Before You Fly services, you're going to get all the rich data that are available here, and of course in alignment with the direction that we've gotten from the FAA to be able to play this role. and you can get it. You can get it without even having to log in, right? And before you fly. If you get to the point where you want to start doing some actual operations, then you can get what's called a personal account. But the beauty of it is things don't change as you progress through that. Your experience is the same. If you're coming as a before you fly user, you get the same content. If you come in as a Lance user and you have your personal account, you get the same content. And guess what? If you come in as an organizational user, same thing. That's the beauty of the portal. It just maintains that smooth, common flow of experience as you're progressing and maturing and becoming maybe an advanced operator.
Wow, that's amazing. And again, congratulations on having that ability to integrate this into the AirHub portal. Now, I've discovered the area. I see lots of things going on here. I want to now take this into planning. Walk me through what that's going to look like.
Yeah, let's jump over to planning. Okay, we're going to plan an operation. I actually have one teed up here in our backyard.
Is that right? That's the blue area that I see? Like
exactly. That's essentially my operation tent volume or my operation area. Now here's what's kind of fun, right? So if I start editing this, so I'm going to minimize the advisories here, and we can name this. We'll call it Dawn's Op, right?
Oh, cool. And I know. Well, did you just drop waypoints on here to create that box? Is it that easy?
Yeah, we can do waypoints. We can do any types of geometry, rectangle, polygon.
Look at that. Okay, gotcha.
Exactly. That's right. Now I started this a little bit later, so I'm going to push it to the right in terms of time. We're going to make that PM. You're not going to be able to fly until a little bit later until we get done with this interview here. And then I'm going to go ahead and sketch that. I'm going to resketch that so you can just kind of see how that works. It's easy as just clicking on the map. Let's say you're going to do an operation to be able to do a linear inspection.
Okay. And by the way, I love that you made a P3 Tech Consulting blue. So yeah.
You're welcome. So you can see, if you notice on the bottom right, remember how I said the data is always kind of feeding in and part of the workflow? So you see this little notice down here. When I expand that, it's telling us, hey, you're within that boundary of Ford Field. So if there's ever a game, here's what's really awesome about this. All right. So this is a new feature coming in. So the FAA publishes these boundaries around stadiums, right?
Yeah, right.
But we've actually integrated with a commercial provider, right? So we bring in data. So when those stadiums actually have an event, you'll see. And when the Lions were playing, for example, in Detroit,
I still love that they lost, but moving on.
I know. We're all mourning, especially Sam. She's it's been hard, but you can actually see that there is a game. It'll tell you the event in addition to that boundary. You kind of see what we're doing here, right?
Okay, yeah, that's amazing. Okay, excellent.
So it's dynamic. If I move this around, you can see it's always saying, hey, there's different things that you need to be aware of in that operational space. It's always refreshing. It's always asking and answering those questions for you.
Okay. So now, Colby, quick question. For record keeping, does this, because I'm doing operational planning now. So basically this is my flight plan. Right. Am I able to access this later? In other words, is this what you're showing? Oh yeah, looks like a screenshot almost. So you're able to kind of maintain this from a management and data collection standpoint as well?
You got it. So once I've completed that operation, this is where it gets really fun. So we essentially within the tools, we can start bringing that operation plan and then all the information that's associated post-operation. So it could be flight logs. Maybe there's some pre-flight checklist.
Sure.
Essentially, that's what these tools are all about. In the managed tools, you can add that information with the flight log. You can do those attachments. Maybe you have drone flight logs coming from the drone that you want to attach. Maybe it's a checklist. You can attach that to the flight log. You can say what drone was being used. All that information can be captured here within our crew and asset management tools.
So that's like on the back end, but like on the front end, if the planner is separate from the operator, separate from the manager, for example, and the planner now needs to get approval, hypothetically, from either a manager or director. You can still save that, send it to the manager, get that operational approval internally in your own organization, as an example, and then go ahead and conduct that operation once that's approved.
So you need to be on our product team, Dawn, because you're actually talking about our 1.3 release that's coming up in the next quarter. So
Okay, all right. Well, there, look, Colby, you're a former Air Force too, right?
yeah, I was a contractor with the Air Force. You
Yeah,
got it.
I remember you had background working with the Air Force, and I'm
You got
a
it.
former Air Force, and I'm just thinking about, in any organization, there's always approval processes. Even internally, FAA, Lance, everything else aside, local requirements. There's always something internally that you're going to have to get a mother may I, oftentimes, before
Yep.
you hit that, boom, props clear, let's go. We're flying now. So that's awesome that you're planning for that, because that is really significant. So let's talk about, right now I am flying. Okay. I'm flying, I'm conducting the operation, and now there's some dynamic thing occurring. Can you kind of walk us through what that could look like?
Yeah, so I'm going to bring you into a view here. This is essentially showing historical traffic. Let's just see, maybe there's some current traffic going on. This is actually coming from a live sensor in Detroit.
Whoa. Okay.
Nobody, that's right. And so not only can you see the live data, but you can also see the historical data based on date ranges. So we actually work with a lot of different sensor and service providers to be able to bring these data into the application to give you a better understanding of your operational airspace, not only in your planning steps, but actually in your flight steps. So that's going to show you what's going on there in your operation space. And so you can zoom in and get a better understanding. This is kind of even at a director level. So the director can have a better understanding, hey, who flew when and where, right? This is all anonymized, but it gets you an understanding of what's going on within the operational space for your organization or for your community.
And Colby, in real time, as the operation is actually occurring, again, going back to my Air Force days, I was in a lot of op centers watching real world operations I can't talk about, otherwise I'd have to kill you. But I assume that, for on the commercial side, people may want to, like a director manager may want to see what's happening in real time. Can multiple people be logged in looking at this thing as it's occurring, like in an op center scenario?
That's right. That's the idea. And so one of the things that we're working on is, and this kind of takes us into the UTM space, not only can you get a better understanding of your organization operations, but any of the information that might be available from the UTM system, like the data subscription services that are out there. Where might there be another event or any other activity that should be factored into your, we'll say, situational awareness to be able to manage all the operations holistically? But that's exactly where we're trying to go. And a lot of the good work that we're doing up in Detroit under the Detroit Air program is going to take us there.
Yeah. Detroit, Michigan, you guys are doing amazing things up there. I've been watching from afar, and it'll be interesting. I can't wait to talk to you more about that. But tell me a little bit about routing. So, you created this box during planning, as you called it, an operational corridor. You're operating now within this volume of airspace, and something happens that maybe you need to reroute or do something. How does that work in AirHub Portal?
Okay, so this is where it gets really powerful. It's fairly straightforward to be able to get data. It's another step to be able to bring it all together in a map, but being able to combine it into a common model or a data surface and to be able to take action on it, I think this is where Portal really shines. So I'm going to show you how this all works together. So remember, we've got all those data sources in the back end there. I'm going to ask some questions here. I'm going to say, hey, tell me, I need these data sets to be able to answer the question. You can see some of the usual suspects out there in terms of ground hazards, prisons, schools. This is just a sample of everything railroads, helipads, etc.
Okay.
So we have these live pipelines from the authoritative service sources. These are not cached, right? These are live dynamic data services that are coming in the portal.
Okay.
I'm going to ask it a question. I'm going to essentially say, hey, tell me what's going on in this space when it comes to those data sets. It's going to generate a surface. It made a request, return the data, and combine them into a common surface. Now, what that gives us now
Whoa.
is the means to be able to do dynamic things. So in this particular case, I'm going to run a route across this bad boy here. I'm going to go from here down to here. Now, that's as a crow flies, right?
Okay.
What this system is going to do, it's going to find the optimal route based on essentially each one of those features that are in the map.
Okay.
And I'm going to tell it, hey, avoid essentially the values that you see on the left there
Okay.
are going to be avoid things. I'm going to fly an AGL and it's going to give me the optimal route. Boom,
No
just
way.
like that. Yep.
And so not only during planning, but you're saying dynamically during a flight, you could dynamically reroute and say you need to go over here now.
You got it. So there's a service that's available that you could use to automate that in flight. If something came in like an advisory, it could recognize that, run a new route, and actually transmit that to the drone to be able to change course. That's exactly the idea. And this can be done across the entire United States at scale. We can talk about this. We've gotten their permission, but we did essentially this for UPS to help them with their Part 135 exemption. We're really excited to provide them that opportunity. And, sometimes, just sometimes, you might be wanting to fly next to things. So I'm just going to change a value. And let's say we're doing linear inspection for this railroad line.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm just going to
near
change
it.
that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh, now it just
I'm flying over it.
go right over it.
Exactly.
Wow. That's unbelievable. So
And it's just the beginning.
yeah, this is this is amazing. So tell me then on the back end, so you've discovered, you've planned, you've operated, and now as a manager, you want to kind of go back and look at things. We talked a little bit about this, but dive more into kind of what this crew and asset management looks like in real time.
Yeah. So who's flying what, where, and when? That's essentially, those are the questions that we're looking to answer. And, just to get right down to it, that boils down to good flight logs, right? So as you're planning those operations, we're capturing that information that's associated with it and generating these flight logs initially. Now you can go into any one of these and edit what you need in order to make the updates. You get the summary. Where was that flight? What was the aircraft? Who was on the crew? All that information. But it's going to become more rich. You're going to be able to essentially attach those files, checklists, maybe the actual aircraft flight log data, so you can see the actual flight path in here. So all that information is going to be captured again. So your director and your manager can see that information, ensuring compliance, ensuring best utilization of resources for the organization, et cetera.
And we never really want to think about mishaps, but look, accidents happen. And I imagine, I'm putting my lawyer hat on now for a second, in the event of such a scenario, to have this kind of data to go back and do some, let's just call it investigation as to, okay, what happened, who was where, what's that flight log saying, that could really help probably in forensics, if you will, to go back and look at something if needed. In addition to just patting on the back, we're doing great, our operations are awesome. I imagine that could be a very, very important tool for businesses, especially at scale, folks doing repeatable, very large operations down to the smallest individual drone pilot, right? All very important. So, wow, this is amazing. So Colby, you've shown us all these different things. My question is, how do someone like me, how do people access the app?
You know what? Start the journey. If you're a recreational operator, come on in before you fly. Love to have you. And by the way, we love feedback. If there's anything that we can do to make that a better experience for you, we're listening and we're actually moving fast to make those improvements in real time. The second thing is, if you're going to be flying commercial operations, if you're a licensed operator, you got your registered drone, come on into Lance. It's a great experience for you. And I think you're going to find being able to fly commercially effectively is great. If you're doing those advanced operations, give us a call. The platform can be configured and integrated to be able to meet your needs and really well tailored to your particular service or use case. The last thing I would say, if you're a large organization or if you're a community and looking to integrate those drones, we've got something for you too. We are well adept in making sure that we can align with your interests, whether it's supporting the community or providing a service, and put that infrastructure in place to be able to express that capability in AirHub Portal for your community or your organizations. So there's those, you kind of see that journey that the platform essentially supports along the way. But first things first, just get out and fly. It's a lot of fun.
That's awesome. Colby, we titled this Uniting the Skies, Streamlining Workflows, but it's really uniting and safeguarding the skies as well as streamlining workflows. So thanks for all you're doing. It's incredible. It was so fun to learn about AirHub Portal and all the functionalities and even the stuff you have coming down in the pipeline. So we'll keep an eye out. And like Colby said, everybody, just jump in there and try it out. So anything else, Colby, before we dial off?
No, thank you so much, Dawn. This was a lot of fun. It's always great to see you out at the trade shows. Looking forward to that. And happy skies, everybody. Fly safe.
Fly safe out here.